The struggles of overthinking. Why the underground man's mind is his prison. Fyodor Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground stands as a powerful critique of the rationalist and utopian ideologies prevalent in his time. While many thinkers of the 19th century celebrated reason, progress, and the belief in a perfectible society, Dostoevsky warned that these ideals could quickly devolve into despair. Through his exploration of the underground man's psyche, Dostoevsky shines a light on the perilous consequences of excessive reliance on logic, particularly the principles of utilitarianism and scientific determinism. These philosophies, he suggests, may ultimately lead to nihilism, a void where life's inherent meaning is questioned, and all pursuits seem futile. At the heart of this existential exploration is the underground man character, who embodies both the rejection of and surrender to nihilism. His acute self-awareness, rather than leading to clarity or peace, traps him in a labyrinth of overthinking, where every decision becomes a source of paralyzing doubt. Through his story, Dostoevsky delivers a cautionary message that resonates across time. Overthinking, emotional withdrawal, and a lack of meaningful action can lead to a life of suffering and stagnation. The underground man's plight is timeless, reflecting struggles many still face today: feelings of detachment, the burden of overanalysis, and the difficulty of forging real connections. 1. A life devoid of meaning. The underground man's life is marked by deep frustration and resentment. Once employed as a government clerk, he loathed his work, yet continued out of financial necessity. When fate presents him with an inheritance, instead of seizing the opportunity to change his life, he retreats completely into isolation in a modest apartment in St. Petersburg. With no friends, no meaningful relationships, and no social interactions to anchor him, he willingly embraces a life of solitude. This withdrawal only deepens his nihilistic worldview, leading him to believe that life, in its entirety, is devoid of meaning and value. Rather than taking action to change his circumstances, he succumbs to a self-destructive cycle of self-loathing. Convinced that his life is insignificant, even when his health declines, he refuses treatment not out of ignorance, but as a form of self-punishment. His choice to neglect his well-being mirrors his broader emotional and spiritual decay, a profound reflection of his internal conflict. This mindset remains relevant in the modern world, where many face feelings of disillusionment and meaninglessness. Social isolation, digital escapism, and avoidance of real-world challenges often lead individuals to withdraw from life, finding a strange comfort in despair that further feeds their isolation. 2. The fear of action. One of the defining characteristics of the underground man is his tendency to overanalyze every situation. He regards himself as intellectually superior to those around him, believing that deep, careful thought should always outweigh hasty or impulsive action. But this belief, while rooted in a sense of intellectual superiority, becomes his greatest flaw. It renders him incapable of making decisions, taking risks, or pursuing any meaningful goals. His own perfectionism and overthinking paralyze him, leaving him stuck in a cycle of inaction. A critical moment in the novel occurs when the underground man crashes a farewell party thrown by his former classmates. Although he despises them, he craves their approval and validation. When his attempt at social engagement ends in rejection, he is consumed by bitterness and fantasizes about getting revenge. Yet, true to his character, he remains utterly paralyzed by doubt and does nothing. This moment exemplifies his inability to act on his emotions, his isolation from others, and his self-destructive avoidance. This tendency to avoid confrontation and personal connection extends to his relationships. He engages with Liza, a prostitute, not out of genuine empathy, but to assert control over someone more vulnerable. However, when confronted with the reality of her suffering, the underground man realizes that his isolation has made him incapable of authentic human interaction. His desire for control only underscores his own emptiness and powerlessness. This pattern of avoidance is still prevalent today, Many individuals, paralyzed by fear of failure or rejection, convince themselves that they are above taking risks. This unwillingness to engage with life, to step outside their comfort zones, leads to stagnation and the eventual realization that they have wasted precious time. Like the underground man, those who retreat into passivity often find themselves stuck in cycles of regret and dissatisfaction. 3. The prison of overthinking. The underground man's obsession with introspection and self-awareness is another defining trait of his character. He believes that constant self-reflection grants him greater insight into the nature of existence. Yet, instead of bringing him closer to enlightenment or peace, this constant internal scrutiny only deepens his suffering. Rather than interacting with the world, he remains trapped in a mental prison where each thought is endlessly examined and re-examined. This excessive overthinking creates an internal loop of doubt, indecision, and fear. The underground man's belief that successful individuals are naive fools prevents him from realizing that action, even imperfect action, is essential for growth and personal development. His refusal to engage with life, to make choices, or to accept the possibility of failure renders him incapable of moving forward. In today's world, this struggle is compounded by the overwhelming availability of information. The constant bombardment of options, advice, and analyses can make decision-making feel paralyzing. Like the underground man, many people today spend so much time deliberating over every possible outcome that they fail to take meaningful action. Their indecision, which they may justify as intellectual rigor, ultimately leads to stagnation and unrealized potential. 4. Self-loathing and loneliness. Beneath his arrogance and intellectual superiority, the underground man is deeply consumed by self-loathing. He outwardly dismisses society, dismissing others as ignorant or shallow, yet secretly yearns for their acceptance. This deep contradiction lies at the core of his misery. He craves validation, but his bitterness and cynicism prevent him from seeking the connections he desires. His disdain for others is matched only by his disdain for himself. The underground man fantasizes about humiliating those who have wronged him, but he is ultimately too paralyzed by his own self-doubt to take any real action. His inaction only deepens his feelings of powerlessness and alienation. His inability to connect with others becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, reinforcing his belief that he is destined to live alone, forever isolated from the world. This cycle of self-loathing and isolation remains all too familiar in modern society. Many individuals, consumed by feelings of inadequacy and fear of rejection, retreat into themselves, avoiding relationships and social interactions. The underground man's story stands as a stark warning against allowing bitterness and cynicism to close off opportunities for genuine connection. 5. The trap of intellectual superiority. The underground man believes that his intelligence sets him apart from others, making him exceptional. However, this belief in his own superiority ultimately prevents him from achieving anything of value. He rejects practical responsibilities, viewing them as beneath him. Instead of using his intellect to engage with the world meaningfully, he isolates himself further, feeding his own sense of superiority, while failing to make any tangible contributions. In his government job, he deliberately frustrates those who seek his help, finding satisfaction in making others' lives more difficult. He sees this as proof of his intellectual acumen, yet in reality it only serves to deepen his isolation and dissatisfaction. His refusal to engage with the world constructively, his rejection of responsibility, and his desire to undermine others only contribute to his growing misery. This tendency to use intellectual detachment as a defense mechanism is still common today. Some people avoid real engagement with the world, dismissing challenges and responsibilities as trivial or pointless. However, true wisdom comes not from contemplation alone, but from the ability to engage with the world and take action. The underground man's failure to do so is what ultimately leads to his suffering. A warning for the modern age. Dostoevsky's Notes from Underground is more than a critique of nihilism. It is a deeply personal exploration of the dangers of unchecked introspection and emotional isolation. The underground man's misery is self-inflicted, stemming from his refusal to engage with the world, his obsession with overthinking, and his belief that his intellect sets him apart from others. His story serves as a warning for modern times. While self-awareness and introspection have value, they must be balanced with action. Overthinking, emotional detachment, and inaction do not lead to fulfillment. They only deepen dissatisfaction. The true lesson of Notes from Underground is that life must be lived, not merely analyzed. Those who get trapped in cycles of self-doubt and avoidance must learn to break free and take action, lest they risk becoming prisoners of their own minds.